What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, back talking some Packers at PackersNews.com on Facebook. How is everyone? It's been a while. I've been to London. I've been back. The Packers are set to start their minicamp tomorrow. No official word yet if the veterans will be excused, as they have been the past several years, but one would suspect that will be the case. Clearly, there'll be lots more still going on. Starting tomorrow, the next 3 days, we'll have it all covered for you for the PackersNews.com. But in the meantime, I thought I'd jump on and talk to you guys about the big signing the Packers had today. Defensive tackle Joey Imbu. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Imbu, something like that. Jen from Los Angeles, what's up? Brazil checking in, what's up? Hello, everyone in the comments. Always nice to see you all. Glenn, that's very nice of you to say. I missed you guys too. Will I be at minicamp? No, I will not. The next time I'll be in Green Bay will be for training camp. I'll fly in the morning of the shareholders meeting, which is at night for the first time. North Dakota, what's up? Tyler, vacation was fantastic. I love London. I always love it when I'm there. I miss it already. Sunny SoCal, what's up? DeMario, it's sunny in New York too. Hello to everyone jumping in the comments. It's always amazing how many people like to show up and talk some Packers. Now you have something to watch on lunch break again. I'm here to serve. Make your lunch breaks a little bit more interesting. Although lunch, I'm guessing you're on the West Coast then, or someplace not on the East Coast. Do I have something in my teeth? That'd be bad. Brett Favre invented RPOs. No, he didn't invent RPOs, but he certainly came up with them in Green Bay when he was bored in practice. If anybody hasn't seen the video I posted on Twitter, make sure you check it out. Favre, as I said later on, actually earlier this morning on Twitter, RPOs have been around forever. Newt Rockne was running RPOs, but they come in and out of fashion, in and out of style, as does everything in the game of football. It's all cyclical, and obviously it's all the rage in the NFL now. The Eagles won a Super Bowl using a heavy dose of run-pass option. But although, to be fair, a lot of what the Eagles do is actually just play-action passing that gets kind of misidentified as RPOs. But that said, Mike McCarthy was running RPOs with Brett, and it obviously still runs them with Aaron's. And a lot of the league has started to kind of use a lot of those concepts, something that's used not predominantly, but a lot in college football as well. So, who's the new defensive tackle? He's a guy who's bounced around the league, came in as an undrafted free agent for the Falcons, and had time in Washington. I believe he played roughly 7 games last year in Indianapolis, and now he's in Green Bay. And, first blush you think, yeah, it's probably depth signing, camp body, what have you, but depending on how much 3-man Mike Pettin ends up wanting to play, he's got a shot to make the roster. And you don't know what you have in Montravius Adams. Most likely, obviously, Wilkerson, Daniels, Clark, and probably Lowry are locks, although I would put Lowry between lock and good bet using the old Bob McGinn method there. So I think there's a chance for him, but most likely that's somebody you just want to, be able to handle all the reps you're about to throw at these guys in, not only minicamp, but in training camp as well. Do the Packers have a top 10 defense this year? I get asked this a lot. Really, it's impossible to make any kind of determination until we see these guys in pads on their feet, playing some, maybe not actual football, but at least hitting and flying around and trying to make things happen both in practice and preseason games. I mean, I think potential is there. On paper, they look like they have potential to be a top 10 defense, but none of that means a hill of beans, especially sitting here early June. What difference do you think Joe Philbin will make? I think Joe does a great job of being a no-man for Mike McCarthy. I don't think Edgar Bennett was much of a guy who was going to stand up to Mike, and I think that's pretty much the brief that, Joe's never going to come out and say that, but he's going to tell Mike, I think this works, I think this is a good idea, I think this is a bad idea, and that's during the week. I think game day, he's been cited by not only coaches but players as well, as someone who has a really good eye for what teams are trying to do to take things away from the Packers and how they can counter it. In the heat of the action, you're on the sideline there, you got the headset on, you're thinking of a million things as not only the play caller, but as the head coach. McCarthy has leaned on Philbin in the past when he's been in Green Bay, and I think he'll continue down that road. I think Joe will be an excellent kind of right-hand man, so to speak. And as he said, his introductory press conference is his job to make Mike McCarthy look like the best play caller in the league. He certainly did that the last year that he was in Green Bay. I think Rodgers will flourish with Graham, and Lewis will be a great blocking tight end. I tend to agree. I think, again, you're sitting here in June, looking at it on paper, guys are running around in shorts. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but yeah, I think the potential is definitely there. You look at Lewis and Graham, the way they should complement each other, they can do a lot of damage on offense with those two at tight end, and not to mention Kendricks. I think Kendricks will be freed up to do a lot more of the move/H-back type stuff that I think that's where he excels. Last year, obviously, especially once Martellus Bennett left the scene, he was asked to do a lot of inline stuff, a lot of traditional tight end stuff that he's just not very good at. And I think, being able to be freed up to be more of an H-back move type will benefit Kendricks and the offense. What about Brett? Jeff, good question. I think Brett Hundley is in for the fight of his life to make the roster. What percentage of the time do the Packers have 5+ defensive backs on the field this year? Peter, I would guess on average around 75, maybe even up to 80%. That's actually the percentage that Mike Pettine mentioned in his introductory press conference. And, in this league, the way teams spread things out, they want to get athletes on the field. They want to, stretch you not only horizontally but vertically as well. It just makes sense to get your athletes on the field. And I think some of that will depend on, how guys like Martinez hold up in coverage, and Oren Burks and those guys, even Clay Matthews. But for the most part, I think they're going to want to get not only their draft picks on the field, but guys like Kevin King and Lindsey Pipkins is a guy that I think a lot of people probably don't think a whole lot of in the offseason, but I think he could surprise. There's some athletes that could, potentially make their way into, kind of making a case for playing time, so to speak. Omar, I appreciate your review of Solo. I completely disagree, and that's fine. That's where we are. However, this is a Packers chat, so I'm not going to dwell too much on Star Wars. Do you think our secondary will be much improved this year? I have no idea at this point. My hunch is yes, simply because I think Mike Pettine will be much more organized than Dom Capers was. But that doesn't mean anything, again, sitting here in June. Again, I tend to think Mike Pettine is the most important hire/addition the Packers have made this offseason. But we have to see how guys like Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson and even Kevin King, who's, coming back from a pretty significant injury, those guys have to step up. And if they do, then, yeah, I think they have a really good chance of really turning things around. But yeah, there's a long way to go before we even begin to get the answers to those questions. Mary, so no Dez, right? Sure would appear there would be no Dez. I had read that the Packers had slight interest in Dez Bryant prior to the draft. And then the draft came, they drafted the 3 wide receivers, and that pretty much shut the door. I would tend to think that makes a lot of sense. That's pretty Packers-esque, so to speak, and I know that's, looking at 13 years of Ted Thompson, but sure seems that Brian Gutekunst is following in a similar path. I wouldn't completely close the door, but I would put the chances at 1% to 2%. Maybe if there's a injury or two, say, not only in minicamp, maybe the early start of training camp. And at this point, I think that probably serves Bryant best to just wait for training camp to start. Every year it happens. We get that first week of camp, there are just a slew of injuries. And say 1 or 2 guys go down around the league, he might be able to kind of pick his destination, so to speak. And if that spot happens to, unfortunately, be Green Bay, I don't think the Packers would be above giving him a call. But like I said, that's a very small percentage chance. Drew, who's doing returns? I think Jair Alexander is probably your first up. He's electric with the ball in his hand. He's proved he can do it in college. I don't think Trevor Davis is going to relinquish the job without a fight, but I do think Alexander will be the guy who ends up being the man at returner. Why are people calling? Because they know I'm live. That's so annoying. Sorry, guys. Jamon Moore named surprise starter. I mean, yeah, it's possible. Anything is possible until we see these guys in pads. I mean, remember Trevor Davis, his rookie year? He came in those first couple days in minicamp and even in OTAs. He looked very promising, and there was lots of ink spilled about him, or digital pixels, if you will. And in the first 2 days of training camp, again, he caught a couple, both those first days, bombs from Rodgers, and people were getting so excited, and then the pads came on, and it all disappeared. So, can Jamon Moore, surprise people and become a starter? Absolutely. But the Packers offense, especially when you're going from college to the pros, that first year, the adjustments that are necessary, what you need to know, just in a mental aspect, is so much greater than what these guys were asked to do in college. And then you add the physicality to it, not only the physicality of training camp, but just getting off the line, getting off a jam, beating corners that frankly are so much better than the guys they faced in college. You never know how that transition is going to go. Geronimo Allison has proven that he can play in the league. Now, I don't know, I think he's also shown he has a limited ceiling, but he's shown he can play. And he's also shown that he has Aaron Rodgers' trust. And you cannot, discount that or minimize it. There's no doubt that Allison will be given every shot to win that job opposite Davante Adams on the perimeter. That doesn't mean Jamon can't do it, but he's got a long way to go. If Alexander beats out Davis for returns, does Davis make the final cut? I tend to doubt it. That's just guessing here in June, but that would be my hunch, yeah. Does Adams get 20? Marcus, that is a great question. I love that he put that out there yesterday. For those of you who aren't on Twitter, Davante Adams had a cryptic type tweet where he said only 2 wide receivers in the history of the league have had 20-plus touchdowns in a single season. And then he had the thinking emoji. Maybe indicating that, he's targeting 20 touchdowns this year. Now, I tend to think that's a really lofty goal in an offense and with a quarterback who does spread things around so much. But hey, without Jordy Nelson, Rodgers has got to focus on someone, right? So it's a possibility. Byron Bell, yay or nah? I'll tell you what, Tom. I'll say the same thing I said on Twitter the night that news broke. In fact, that was the night before I left. If Byron Bell makes the squad as simply, strictly depth, a guy who could play tackle, but could also play inside at guard, etc. They have him there as kind of in case of emergency, break glass. That's fine. I get that. But if he's being signed to come in and play right tackle because they know Brian Bulaga is not going to be ready, Aaron Rodgers better get those shoes he likes and those pants he likes and get ready to run, because Byron Bell at tackle is a disaster waiting to happen. And I know a lot of people, when I said that, have responded with, worse than Spriggs, worse than Murphy, etc. I'd much rather, if I'm the Packers, have Murphy out there before Byron Bell. And all you got to do is turn on the tape of that start he had in Atlanta last year. And I get it, as a left tackle, that's on the road, that's in Atlanta. All those caveats aside, it was ugly. And I don't think he's a tackle. I think he's a pretty good guard, actually. And I know when the Packers brought him in last summer, they were looking at him to kind of be a swing guy, tackle guard. And I think at guard, he makes a lot of sense. But at tackle, he's a liability. Now, all of that said, the Packers went 15-1 with, Marshall Newhouse playing left tackle for a good portion of that year. So if there's a quarterback that can make it work, it's Aaron Rodgers. Our secondary is going to be Legion of Boom 2.0. Casey. Some lofty expectations there. It's all potential right now. It's all, we're looking at stuff on the paper and guys in shorts. But I mean, you look at King, bigger guy. Josh Jackson, bigger guy on the outside. You know, Jair Alexander, kind of a army switchblade knife kind of guy. I had someone reprimand me about my use of switchblade. Yeah, I mean, again, it's all potential. I don't think it's going to be... I think they'll take their lumps early. Let's just put that out there. When you look at, you know, the fact that you're going to have, probably by default, a lot of young guys starting, first and second year players, there's going to be times that they're going to struggle. But for the most part, you know, the potential is there. Maybe as the year goes on, they solidify and they kind of hit their stride in November and December. It's possible. Article was saying Green Bay may have the next up-and-coming Power D. Samuel, I read that. That was my buddy Doug Farrar, I believe, is the article you're mentioning over at Bleacher Report. I mean, the pieces are in place. Like I said, Mike Pettin, he's, to me, one of the better defensive minds in the league. I've always been a fan. And he, you know, if there's a guy who can turn it around, it's Pettin. I just don't know about the pieces that have been put in place, just because we need to see them. We need to see them in action. Chad, very nice of you to say. Missed you guys too. Thanks for checking us out. Do you see Ahmad Thomas or Josh Hawkins making the 53? I think Hawkins probably has a better chance. Thomas is a bit of a long shot, but you know, it all depends on what happens when they put those pads on in late July, early August. What do you think about the Earl Thomas situation? Philip, I think it makes a lot of sense for Thomas to withhold services. He is one of, if not the kind of best free safety in the league. The Seahawks have pretty much proven that their defense cannot operate without him. They are a very different entity when he is not on the field. And he knows this, and he's using that leverage. Now, it's a third contract. The Seahawks have some history of paying guys on their third deal. But I also understand their reticence, and I understand it's a business. So I think there's a chance that if they end up getting some kind of offer for him, I know everyone in Dallas is salivating at the idea of getting him down there. But yeah, I mean, I understand both sides of it. And what I don't understand are people, oh, he signed a contract, he needs to honor it. Oh, shut up. Like, you know, Richard Sherman had a contract, and he got cut. You know? Those are the things that are kind of ridiculous to me. Is Raji going to start over Wilkerson? That is my cue to leave. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the Raji mention. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'm going to take off, but I will be back tomorrow. We'll have more to talk about with minicamp starting. We'll find out what we assume will be if the veterans are excused. In the meantime, make sure you're checking PackersNews.com. Michael Cohen has a piece up, kind of what we learned from OTAs. We'll have everything covered for you from minicamp. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com early and often. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you soon.